Okay, econ students, time for another lesson. We are getting into the topic of tariffs and quotas. Now, there was at one time a term called mercantilism, and that was the idea, it was an age-old idea, that exports, being a nation that exported was better than being a nation that imported. And so it was better to have a trade surplus, meaning I export more to them than what they do to me. But Adam Smith, who is often called the founder of modern economics, he really developed the idea of free trade and talked about this invisible hand that just kind of operated, and the markets would just operate freely if there was free trade and no government intervention. So just so you know, exports are the things that we send out, the goods and services that we send out and we sell. Imports are what we buy from other people and bring in. And so a trade surplus is nice, but you really want to have balance, all right? You want to be sending things out, but you also want to be bringing things in, all right? Actually, the sending out pays for what comes in. It's no different than what you and I do when we work jobs. That's bringing stuff, that's giving us the ability to pay for things that we want to buy. So it's very, very similar. Gotta have some tea. Now, the general case for trade is that trade should be free. There's a term called protectionism. And the idea about protectionism is that there are some who think that if I'm importing items that are low priced from like a Japan or China or whatever, wherever, then I might hurt our domestic markets here at home. For example, if we think in terms of cars, we want to buy American made, right? That's the idea, that's what we hear. And so we don't want Japan coming in with lower priced vehicles than what our US cars are selling for. So, because we want to buy American, right? So protectionism then puts this thing, a tariff, puts a thing called a tariff. A tariff is a tax on items that are coming in. So let's just say we have a car for $10,000 coming in from Japan, and we put a 10% tariff on. That's another $1,000. That makes that vehicle now $11,000. Probably not going to buy that now because it's higher priced. But actually what happens is tariffs hurt the domestic market, the very market that we're trying to protect. It hurts. And here's how it hurts it. If we put 10% on a tariff on Japanese cars that are $10,000 and now we make them an $11,000 ticket, maybe we were thinking we're only going to spend $10,000 on a vehicle. So maybe we're not going to buy the vehicle. Maybe we're going to look and buy used or something like that. Or what would happen is, because of the law of supply and demand, the law of supply says, as price rises, supply will rise. In other words, when other suppliers, possible suppliers and entrepreneurs, see a thing selling at this price up here, they want to get in the market and sell it. So what would happen is the domestic market would see the $11,000 on the imported vehicles, and they would say, hey, if they're getting 11,000, if we can get 11,000, let's do it. So the price will go up to 11,000 on the domestic vehicles. Tariffs actually raise the price of domestic products, and they hurt the domestic market. Now, some people would argue and say, well, we're not hurting because we're buying American, we're buying U.S., and that's going to help because eventually. Well, that's going to help. We're putting workers back to work and all of that, okay? But where it hurts is by paying the extra $1,000 because of the tariff driving that up. What happens is that extra $1,000 that we would have normally had to spend on entertainment, movies, going out to restaurants, and other things, we now no longer have those funds available to do those. So those other domestic markets will feel the pinch. Not only that, but the Japanese market, those people may want to come in and buy U.S. cars, but we've raised our price up, so now, while it's $1,000 that hurts us here. They're not being able to sell their Japanese vehicles to us, all right? They're not being able to sell, so if they can't sell, they don't have the money to buy other goods and services that we might provide, whether they're cars or other things. They lose that opportunity to buy. So that's what happens with tariffs. There again, it's government intervention. It's government seeks to help, and yet oftentimes the intervention hurts the very people that it tries to help. So that's the case about free trade. That's the big picture. The book talks about quotas and other trade barriers, but that's the main one that we want to talk about and get the idea. Tariffs, okay? The free market doesn't like tariffs. People who don't understand protectionism love it. I love what the economist Milton Friedman said. Protectionism, what it does is it protects the American people or the domestic market. It protects us from low prices. All right? So I hope you understand that. That's what protectionism does. It only protects us from low prices. So that's the lesson. That's the thought. I hope this really helps you understand a little bit about trade and a little bit about some of the trade barriers called tariffs. All right? That's our lesson for today.